good vacation, Steve.
Out of this world.
Doing extreme social distancing.
Meeting. We are broadcasting this live on channel 27 and on Pacific Coast TV's website. We do have a community in attendance this evening. I believe there's 9 so far. Just a few brief etiquette with the attendees. The Planning Commission Chair Benjamin, will open public comment during each specific item, as well as the general public comment section of the agenda. Once the public comment is open, attendees will have the opportunity to speak at that time. Those wanting to speak will go ahead and raise their hand, and we'll acknowledge them on a first come, first serve and follow from there. If you are on a telephone only and calling in, you can push *6 to raise and unraise your hand and *9 to mute and unmute yourself. The tablets, phones, computers all have a little raising hand feature that's usually on the bottom of your screen that you have. We did receive, there are some comments and a memo that was sent out late this evening to the Planning Commission and will be posted to the agenda here shortly. I thank you guys for all your patience, and I'm going to turn the meeting over to start with Chair Benjamin.
Thank you very much, Bridget. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the Planning Commission of the City of Half Moon Bay. For the Jewish members of our audience and staff, L'Shana Tova, Happy New Year. Why don't you rise and join us, if you will, in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So that was me calling the meeting to order with a gavel. Bridget, the first item on our agenda, as usual, is the Pledge of Allegiance and the roll call. So help us out.
Commissioner Polgar.
Sorry, I'm here. While I was
no worries. Caught you the right time. Commissioner Hernandez.
I am present.
Vice Chair Reddick.
Here.
And Chair Benjamin.
Here.
Chair Holt is absent this evening.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, colleagues. The first item on our
Commissioner Holt.
agenda after this is the public comment section of our meeting. This is the time where anyone in the public who wishes to address the Planning Commission on an item which is not one of the two public hearing items on tonight's agenda is free to do so. So I will open the public comment period and ask Bridget if we have any speakers in this time.
I have none. There are none. Oh,
This is the time. Yes.
excuse me. We do have one that just popped up. Irma Morawietz.
Very good. Welcome, Ms. Morawietz.
That's Irma Morawietz. Hi, everybody. So this is, right now I can speak about anything. Is that correct?
Anything except the items that are on the two public hearing items on our agenda tonight.
Okay.
Otherwise, please.
Okay. I'm a resident of Half Moon Bay, 20 years plus. I live in Frenchman's Creek, and I love the coast and everything about it. And I feel there's just so many changes, and I'm really concerned about that. And there's a lot of big projects happening. I know the Hyatt is kind of moving forward. And there's a lot of, I'm a massage therapist, and so I work at different hotels, and they're never filled to capacity. So I'm concerned about things that we're building. It's not really for our community. I mean, we could use a movie theater, maybe a swimming pool. I always seem to see the focus is on, tourism. And I think, we do need that. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, I guess the screen kind of changed. So I'm concerned about the Dunes Beach project, which is huge. And, people come here to enjoy the beach. And I feel it's going to be such a detriment with all, the traffic, the environment. And I'm sure many people have mentioned this. And it's just not a good idea. So I don't know how we as a public can prevent this from happening. I know there's open space and they've offered money to purchase this. So I really would like to see this project not to move forward.
I see. Did we complete your comments, or did we just lose you?
Oh no, I'm still here. Sorry, I'm not
No, that's okay.
sure of the protocol.
No. Well, thank you for asking. We don't normally have a conversation. This is a chance for you to share your feelings, which you've done eloquently. And so my suggestion would be to contact staff if you like, and air your concerns there, equipped to have a conversation. You see Jill Ekus and Scott Phillips, members of Jill's staff. Jill would be the right person to contact.
Jill, okay, perfect. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Ms. Morawietz.
Thank you.
Anyone else, Bridget?
Nope, that is all.
All right. Thank you for the comments. With that, I close the public hearing on the public comment section of our meeting, and we move into the public hearing items on our agenda. The first of which is an application for a sign permit for the temporary installation of two murals on Main Street. And I imagine that this is Scott's item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission.
Can you move a little closer to your mic, please?
Can you hear me better now? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we're good.
I can hear you just fine.
So this is a fairly unique item to be presented to the Planning Commission. Normally, sign permits are reviewed by the Community Development Director. This project, or this proposal, is involves two temporary murals, which our sign code does require approval by the Planning Commission. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and provide a brief PowerPoint presentation. we go. Can you all see this okay?
Yes.
Okay, this slide shows the location of the proposed temporary murals. And there would be two murals, one that faces Main Street and one that faces Kelly Avenue. The murals, here's the first one. The murals, this one would be slightly smaller than the one along Main Street, but this is a photo rendering of the proposed temporary mural that would be installed on the existing fencing there. This slide includes the temporary mural along Main Street, and notice that it is slightly larger, roughly 120 square feet. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. You know, we do have the applicant is available for questions as well. We suggest that the Planning Commission conduct a public hearing, any discussion, and then action. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Scott. Colleagues, does anyone have any clarifying questions about this project before we go to the public hearing?
I do. I just was wondering how, when you say temporary, I didn't see what that meant in terms of length of period time, for instance, or if there is a limit on signage or a mural.
Yes, excellent question. So the temporary murals would be installed along the existing temporary fencing that's along the corner there. We did officially receive an application for a proposed mixed use project at the vacant site, and once or if that project is completed, then this the fencing and mural would be removed.
Anything else, Commissioner Pogar? Sarah, are you finished asking?
Sorry, I shook my head, but no.
Okay, no further
Scott,
questions.
through the chair,
Yes, of course, Commissioner Hernandez.
from a practical perspective, how long do we think this temporary mural could be there from, I don't want to call it the worst case scenario, but from the shortest possible time to conceivably the longest possible time? What are the reasonable extremes that we should consider as we think about this project?
Well, you know, it is a bit speculative. We did just receive an application a couple of weeks ago, so it's a matter of how long the permitting process takes place in construction, and then, you know, I would say roughly anywhere between 2 years and 5 years.
So through the chair, I wonder if we set a 5-year expiration date on the permit, where if the mural is not well maintained or we have some revision, I just wonder if that's an item that we might consider. Just these things can turn into an eyesore over time, and that is my only concern about a mural, is if not well maintained, it could be something that we don't appreciate as a community.
You're muted.
Chair Benjamin, you're muted.
So sorry.
And we can take that up during discussion. Like that's my concern. So we can take that up during the discussion portion of the comment.
Through
Okay,
the chair, that the applicant is here and can speak to it, and then staff will field questions about the proposed conditions of approval.
Of course. So for some reason, I can't get the matrix up to see people's hands. So Bridget, I need you to be my eyes. Are there other clarifying questions?
Oh, I don't know from there, but I do have Joe Brennan, and I did allow him to speak. So if he'd like to say a few words and you're okay with that, I can open
Let me open the public hearing first, and then we'll bring him aboard. If there are no other clarifying questions from the Planning Commission, let's open the public hearing and recognize Joe Brennan.
Good evening.
Yes, sir. Welcome.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Well, I'm the proposer, and I'll give a little bit of background on the project. This is sort of a nature abhors a vacuum project, where these white walls have been there for quite a while. And I saw these two photographs at my high school class reunion. And they are photographs of the two gentlemen that ran Cunha Brothers gas station for, I think, 3 decades on that location, and then a picture of the gas station itself. So I thought it might be a nice little historical throwback to decorate the walls of this temporary fence with what was there historically for quite a while. And Cunha Brothers gas station was actually a minor social hub of the town. Everybody ran a tab there to get their tires and their gas and their oil. And a number of people that I know in the community all work there for the brothers. So it seemed like a natural to propose. My idea of the historic artwork for the city actually was born in Anacortes, where an artist has put up a number of different historic artifacts on the walls of buildings. And most of them up there are cutouts, life-size cutouts of historic people that were part of Anacortes' history. And for Half Moon Bay, it might be something like if we had a picture of Bev Cunha on her tricycle when she was 6 years old, and we would paint that, life-size, and then put that on Cunha's. And if we had a picture of Joe Nunes, the butcher, who was in the Oddfellows building for 40 years or more, if we had a picture of him in his apron and his meat cleaver, that would just give a little history and little interest to the sidewalks. So that's what I saw up in Anacortes, and I thought maybe Half Moon Bay would be appreciative of some of this historic art. And then this pair of photographs presented themselves, and I thought, well, let's give it a try. And so the medium of these photographs, they'll be printed on vinyl. There'll be vinyl banners, and the vinyl banners will be screwed to the plywood. So if they're damaged, cut up, or defaced, they could be removed in a matter of minutes. So that's the medium. They'll go up. They won't be a maintainable thing. I don't think we'll paint on them because they are photographs. And so, as far as the time frame, I'm glad. I'd like to have them up there as long as they're welcome and in good repair. And I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have of the project or of me.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your addressing us. Bridget, are there any other speakers who would like to address us on this item?
I do have Janet Leonard. Let me see if she would like to speak on this topic. One moment.
Thank you.
Hi, Janet. Did you, I'm trying to see if, I believe she was going to speak on the next item, but I just want to make sure she may have a comment on this one as well. So I just want to, I've asked her, there she,
Okay.
There you go. There you are, Janet. Sorry about that. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm just asking, it's been a long time since that gas station was torn down, and I'm wondering why on earth there hasn't been something built there already and what the hangups are. And and sort of bears on how long we might expect these murals to be there. It seems nice to have something other than a blank wall there, but or blank fence. But my concern is just why on earth nothing has ever been developed there. It looks like a desirable piece of property.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment, Ms. Leonard. Is there anyone else, Bridget?
Nope. No
All right,
one.
in that case, I will close the public meeting. Bridget, I don't know if there's some magic that can bring the matrix back for me, but I'm the matrix of participants. All I've got is the, much better, thank you. So we'll bring it back to the staff to see if they had any additional comments before deliberation. Jill, did you have any additional thoughts? Or Scott?
Just a quick one. We did want to thank Joe Brennan. He was working with Tara Hatcher, who has mostly keeps her hours at City Hall. And, you know, Tara's not a planner, but she did her best to help facilitate this application. And then, of course, Scott picked it up and made it a report that brought you co-conformance. I did want to highlight condition A4 about removal, which may answer some of the concerns that commissioners had about the condition that could occur over time if it were to get worn. We also note condition number 3 about maintenance in the event of graffiti tagging and those kinds of things. We just want to be really quick to be responsive about that. Of course, the city's code enforcement officer has a view of this wall from his cube. So it will be noticed if anything happens and taken care of. And we think that will be helpful.
Okay, thank you. Scott, did you have anything you wanted to add, or shall I return it to the commission and hear their thoughts?
What time do you have to be at Tana's?
You are off mute, Bridget. Thank you, Scott. And so colleagues, why don't we deliberate on this item? Who would like to begin? I see Sarah's hand up, and followed by Commissioner Hernandez.
So one thought I had is that I really appreciated Mr. Brennan's story, the history of it, like that provided really some interesting context. I was vaguely aware of what had been there previously. So I'm just wondering if other people who come across this mural, these two murals, might not really understand why they're there, and so it may be nice to include an additional panel or small thing that has a little background about, hey, who are these guys, and what, because it was interesting, and you know, it's a part of Half Moon Bay history. So I just was part of me that thought I would find it a lot more compelling and as a piece of, you know, artwork in our downtown if it had that context of the history and why it's there.
Thank you. Commissioner Hernandez.
So 100% I'm in alignment with Commissioner Polgar's comments. I think that providing some written commentary on both sides of the mural would provide a fantastic context to this project. The second thing, though, is I love the idea of this. And I think that with Commissioner Polgar's comments, with some commentary, and you know, the application, as I'm sure Mr. Brennan wants to apply this, would be pretty compelling, and it would make a great improvement over what's already on the site. I do want to make a comment of, I mean, we don't typically get too far into the weeds with folks, but I will say that I built my house here in Half Moon Bay. We finished it 12 years ago. We started the application process 14 years ago. And I know Chad Hooker went through the application process 14 years ago to convert the gas station into a project. And at the time, the project was sufficiently difficult to get through the city of Half Moon Bay that he could not complete his project in a reasonable time frame. We've since streamlined processes and made it much more straightforward for applicants to develop properties. But I think that it's important to understand that the reason why this gas station lot is still here is because we made it too difficult for applicants to proceed with good development projects. And it's been there for a long, long time. So those are all of my comments.
You're on mute, Jim.
Vice Chair Reddick, your thoughts?
Well, thank you. I applaud the energy and creativity of Mr. Brennan for having this idea and pursuing it like this, and for city staff being supportive. I hadn't thought of it prior to Sarah voicing it a few minutes ago, but I think it's a terrific idea to have just a little bit of interpretation on both sides of that fence too, if that is feasible, and it doesn't have to be fancy and expensive. So I'm sure it ought to be feasible. I think that the conditions that we have for monitoring the health of the vinyl signs via their, what shall we say, the health of it, so it isn't weathered or defaced. I think those are sufficient for monitoring the life of the thing. I'd be happy to go forward with those conditions in place. Yeah, but I think it's a great, very creative idea. Main Street is turning into sort of a little a boulevard of murals and signs and living history. So I think this is a very cool addition to that.
Thank you very much. For my own thoughts, I will say I appreciated very much the line drawing of the two gentlemen, and I think the historical context works. If it were me, I'm not sure I'd go for the gas station, but that is strictly personal stuff, and it has no bearing in a world where there's free speech. So I am fine with what they want to do. And I think as you have voiced, Commissioner Vice Chair Reddick, the conditions are sufficient to ensure that it will stay in good repair. I think the historical context will make it helpful. That reminded me of the murals in the vicinity of the Stanford Shopping Mall. There used to be, and perhaps still is, an artfully portrayed cat with a fish in his mouth near what used to be the I can't remember the name of the restaurant, the deli, and it was supposed to be a reference to the Rue du Chat qui fiche, the cat that fishes. And I think that the idea of bringing history and whimsy into a community would be welcome here. I think the wave at the Cunha site does that in a big way. See what I did? And so I think that it's perfectly fine. I will just say in passing, I wasn't on the Planning Commission in 2008, 10 or 12 years ago. I'm not sure what constitutes too hard for development. I think that's subjective, but it's not immediately material to this project. I know we've been trying to make it work, but ultimately it's the applicant that decides what will pencil out and what to go forward with. So I think those are the only thoughts I have on the project. I would entertain a motion. Is there a motion?
Well, I move we approve the resolution at hand.
I second the motion.
Do we need to modify it to allow for the interpretive information and language? No, okay.
Is that acceptable to the maker and second?
Is which acceptable?
The addition of some explanatory context, some historical, some of that additional information about the significance of the murals.
Well, I wouldn't have a problem with that, but I think Jill is signaling that that in her opinion that isn't necessary.
Well, I was doing that, and then we see that
Mr. Brennan.
our muralist, Mr. Brennan's hand is up, and maybe I know the public is over, but maybe he can clarify about the interpretive signage piece.
We have had the public hearing still open, so I shouldn't be entertaining a motion yet anyway. Thank you for reminding. Good opportunity for Mr. Brenner to have a second bite at the apple.
All right, let me just ask. There he goes. You're live, Joe.
Okay. I am remiss in not mentioning that we have planned a label next to the mural, maybe one paragraph, possibly two. And I will be working with the Half Moon Bay Historical Society, both Dave Cresson and Juliet Applewhite, to get it sort of proofread, make sure it's consistent with what they think happened. We've collected a lot of interesting little details, both about the building and about the two gentlemen. So we'll have one about the two gentlemen and one about the building. And another little detail is that the photograph of the two gentlemen with a fuel pump between them is that the price for gasoline on that fuel pump is 25 cents a gallon.
Exactly.
So we will have labels, and they'll be durable and relatively small, maybe 8.5 by 11 or 8.5 by 14.
Okay, thank you very much. Jill, did you have anything to add, or does that sort of tell the story? Okay, thumbs up from Jill. In that case, before we continue with the motion, bear with me while I get our parliamentary process in order and close the public hearing. Now we have a motion on the floor to approve the project with the understanding that it includes this description paragraph or two as the applicant suggested. Is that still fine with the maker and the seconder?
Yes, it's fine with me.
It is fine with me.
Roll call, please. Bridget.
Commissioner Polgar,
Yes.
Commissioner Hernandez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Reddick,
Yes.
and Chair Benjamin.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for bringing the project forward. The next item on our agenda is a coastal development permit and architectural review for the demolition of an existing residence and the construction of a new 2,264 square foot single family residence with a one-car garage at 2909 Champs-Élysées Boulevard. And this item is Scott's. Take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. I'm going to attempt to share my screen again, and let's see. Can you all see the opening slide?
We can.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, as mentioned earlier, this project includes the demolition of the existing house on the site, which is shown in this slide, and the construction of a new residence, 2-story, with a slightly smaller footprint than the existing house. The floor plan includes 3 bedrooms, 3 baths, and a large family room on the 2nd story. Proposal also includes a built-in outdoor barbecue fireplace in the back and a large spa or small swimming pool, one of the two, in the backyard. And all improvements are designed in compliance with the zoning regulations, including the riparian buffer requirement. The permits requested include a coastal development permit and architectural review. And the site has been posted when the application was originally submitted this month to advertise the meeting tonight. We also published a notice in the Half Moon Bay Review. And we also sent out notices to all the neighbors within 300 feet of the site. This slide shows a aerial photograph of the site and surrounding area. The site is located on the northern cul-de-sac of Champs-Élysées Boulevard on the right-hand side. A city-owned parcel is adjacent to the site to the north. It includes the Naples Creek, or sometimes referred to as the Roosevelt Drainage. And as you can see, there is a house on the site. And the surrounding neighborhood predominantly contains two-story homes. A couple of key points for the Planning Commission to consider: compliance with the development standards, design compatibility, drainage and grading, and adequacy of the draft CEQA document. This slide shows the proposed site plan and includes the proposed footprint of the new home, as well as an outline of the existing house. And the red lines indicate the required 30-foot riparian buffer that's measured from the center line of Naples Creek. And you'll notice that the existing house actually encroaches into this 30-foot riparian buffer. Oh, let's see. I guess I'm in the wrong setting here. I apologize about that. Let's see.
Hey, Scott, through the chair.
Is that better?
Yeah,
Are you guys
of course.
still with my notes, or?
Rick, did you have a comment you needed? Were you having trouble hearing Scott?
I was just trying to clarify the gray structures in the front of the house in between the covered porch and the street. What are those structures?
Those are, that's actually flat work. That's the proposed driveway and walking path. So, yes, and those will be constructed of concrete as proposed right now.
And there'll be some organic material in between the concrete papers?
Correct.
Let me suggest we hold the questions up until he's gotten through his presentation, if that would be
Thanks.
all right.
Sure thing, Jimmy. I was just trying to fill the time while we were stuck.
Very good. Yeah, and Rick, sorry, Rick. Scott, I'm having just a little bit of trouble hearing you. You're a little bit garbled. I don't know if you need to move in a little bit or if there's some background noise, but if you could help out somehow, that would be nice.
Okay, hold one moment, please.
And maybe it was just me. Were you guys having any difficulty?
I was having a little bit.
Right, exactly what I was experiencing. Thank you.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, that's wonderful. Thank you, Scott.
Sorry about that. Okay. So this slide shows front elevation as it faces Champs-Élysées Boulevard. Can you all see that okay? All right, and since the lot meets the definition of substandard, the minimum off-street parking includes one garage space and one carport. And that's what they proposed here, that you see in the lower level. The exterior materials include hardy plank shingles painted in gray. And you can notice a front porch that faces Champs-Élysées Boulevard. In the back, this is the rear elevation that includes the outdoor fireplace. And here's the left side and north elevation that faces Naples Creek. On the opposite side, south facing towards Roosevelt Boulevard. And then here's the first floor plan. Notice the garage and the carport, the first bedroom and kitchen. And then on the upstairs, you have the 2 additional bedrooms and a large family room, like I mentioned earlier. This slide includes the landscape plan, and I've added the red line to show the riparian buffer requirements. And notice that the new landscaping is limited to outside of the buffer. There is a slight encroachment of pavers into the buffer, and we've added a draft condition of approval requiring the removal of the pavers to limit the pavers to the outside of the riparian buffer. As far as grading and drainage goes, the preliminary grading shows a off-fall of 78 cubic yards of grading, and then a detention basin as required would be located off the northwest corner. And we have provided the commission with a memorandum suggesting additional language for the stormwater detention language that's in the conditions of approval. And so take a look at the memo when you get a chance. And then this slide shows the survey. I was contacted by a neighbor in the surrounding area, and one of the questions was whether or not a survey was prepared. So I included this slide as well. It's a topographic and boundary survey. Regarding the CEQA analysis, an initial study was prepared, and the mitigation measures from the biological report were included due to the proximity of the site to Naples Creek and Roosevelt drainage. The draft CEQA document was circulated for 20 days since there is no statewide significance with this project. One comment letter was received from staff at the California Coastal Commission suggesting slight changes to the language within the mitigation measures. The changes were made and included in red light and strikeouts in the draft initial study and mitigated negative declaration that was included with the packet. And I did receive some feedback afterwards from coastal staff, and they were satisfied with the changes. A commissioner, one of the commissioners, planning commissioners, suggested additional changes to strengthen the mitigation measures language, and I'd be happy to make those changes as well. And I also included a slide showing the riparian and wetland buffer map that was prepared and included in the biological report. And you'll notice that the riparian buffer in yellow does go into the subject property. So that's where we get the information for the setting up the buffers. With that, I'd be happy to answer any clarifying questions. We suggest the Planning Commission conduct a public hearing, discussion, and then if appropriate, action.
Okay, thank you very much, Scott. Colleagues, does anybody have clarifying questions for Scott before we open the public hearing? I cannot, I'm still looking at the presentation, so I can't see. Bridget, you're gonna have to help me. Oh, much better, thank you. Yes, Sarah.
I had a couple clarifying questions, but they might, they're probably ones that it might be helpful to ask of the applicant. So maybe we can, I can ask them after the public comment period, or if the applicant is available.
If you think that would be better. Jill has a thought about that.
I don't have a thought about that. I have a thought about, I just want you to know that Bridget lost her connection. And so we'll make sure that I start paying attention to, I take copious notes. So I'm going to quit doing that and start doing this. And anyway, I just wanted to let you know that we will attempt to to persevere.
Thank you. Those are some big shoes to fill, and we wish you the very best.
Thank you.
I can go ahead and ask my questions, and then, and regardless of who might be able to answer them, if that's of interest. How does that sound? Because they truly are clarifying questions. So
sure, maybe that would help him frame his presentation to address them. Make
okay,
good use
great.
of it.
All right. So one that's probably pretty easy to answer. I gather that the spa is, and I saw that in the drawings, it's listed as a pool. And then I just didn't know whether that means like an above ground pool. It seems it's a pretty small pool, but I just didn't know whether that meant it was above ground pool or below ground, kind of what's entailed in, because the pool, as far as I can tell, doesn't exist currently. It's not existing. So that is one question. Another one has to do with just the landowner. If Mr. French is it who lives there, if they live there right now, what their experience is with flooding. Like, is there, when there's a big storm, kind of what happens in terms of flooding around their property? Just to get a sense for that. I know that the drainage has been designed obviously to meet the requirements, but just to kind of, sometimes it's helpful to hear kind of what happens in reality. So that's another question. And then another one has to do with a couple of the plants that are proposed in the landscape plan. And my question was that a couple of them could be invasive, and it's not so much that they're that awful, but frankly, where they're proposed is kind of next to the neighbor's property, and so I was just wondering if they're kind of continuing an existing planting that's already in that area in front of the house, up against the neighbors. And if that's the case, then it's already there. It's like a moot point. But if not, then then my comment would be to find something else, because it's probably not very nice to plant something, even if it's only mildly invasive, next to your neighbor. So, and then there's one thing that's already existing that's highly invasive, but it's already there. They're not proposing to add it. So those are, and then the other question is actually probably more for staff, and it has to do with, and maybe we can discuss this later. Maybe I don't need to bring this up now because I've lost it. Oh, in the memo, we received a memo with additional lot drainage plan and on-site detention requirements. And there was, so I did want to find out, they mostly made sense to me. The last part, which talks about there's about not addressing any, I'm going to hold off. I think that this might come up as we're discussing this, and I think it's a little bit hard to discuss out of context. So those are my questions. As you can see, why I thought that maybe the applicant might be able to help out with addressing them. So.
Yes, I think you're. I agree that regarding the pool and the flooding question, I think the owner would be better equipped to answer those. And in regard to the plants, the final plant palette that'll be included with the building permit will be reviewed by the biologist once again. So.
You're on mute, Jimmy. Jimmy, we couldn't hear you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Commissioner Hernandez, any clarifying questions from you?
So when I look at this project and any projects near water courses, I always worry about flooding. And I see that you're at a 34 to 38 foot elevation, and the top of the bank looks like it's 34 feet above sea level. This question is directed to city staff. I'm worried that we're increasing development here and we're going to push a lot of water into the watershed that may increase flooding. So can city staff respond to that concern? Help me understand why maybe it's misplaced.
For one thing, so the project does propose a reduction in the actual footprint. So there would be a net decrease in the amount of runoff. And we also have Evelyn from Public Works available. She may be able to help out with some clarification on this.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Good evening. So based on the plans, they are proposing to build within the approximately within their building footprint. So what is the site that is currently, the site is currently disturbed, and there is an existing home there. So they are proposing to construct within that similar footprint. So there is a decrease in the building footprint by a few cubic yards, and with the pavers and the additional hard surface that they're proposing, it's only increasing it about 338 square feet. So they are under the 5,000 square, I'm sorry, they're under the 10,000 square feet, which is where you need some more site control measures. So they are required to just provide some low impact development site design measures, which includes the bioretention. So they will be running their, when there's a rain event, it's going to fall, there's going to go through their bioswales to that detention basin right up front on the northern part of the property. From there, it will to the point where if there's enough stormwater runoff, but depending on the event, it will discharge into the street. So it will overflow like a sheet flow over into the street, which has curb and gutter. Does that answer your?
It does, but through the chair, may I ask a follow-up question for our city attorney?
Please.
I wonder, I always wonder about these types of projects that are so close to a watershed. And I wonder if we shouldn't have a release of some kind in the planning documentation or the approval process that says, look, you've come up, as the applicant, you've come up with a design that you think addresses the drainage concerns. I don't want the city to have any kind of responsibility for future flooding on this project. Or is there any reasonable risk here that the city could have an obligation to the applicant if there is flooding after this project has been completed? And is there anything we can put into the approval that mitigates that?
Hey, Rick, I'm going to interrupt and just ask that we continue that conversation after the public hearing, because we might get some more insights that would inform the conversation. And it's less about the facts and more about how we manage the project. Will you forgive me if I hold off for that conversation? I think it's a worthwhile.
I will, for this one time, I will forgive you, Commissioner and Chairman Benjamin.
You are so gracious. Words fail me. Steve, questions?
I don't have any clarifying questions. Thank you.
I had a couple. I was the commissioner that wrote that Scott was referring to, whereas my colleagues had questions about flooding. I noted that the reports said that this was an incised channel, which tells me that water is moving rapidly through this area. That combined with the background knowledge that there's nuisance flooding downstream at the where Naples Avenue approaches this creek, suggests to me that this stream may not be performing hydrologically the way that we think it does. And I wonder if we have any insights about how we think the stream is going to perform in response to this. The question that Rick asked, that Commissioner Hernandez asked, that I would like to get clarification on is the impermeable footprint bigger or smaller for this project? In reading the staff report, I was of the impression that there was less impermeable surface, therefore there'd be more percolation into the ground. And when I heard Evelyn speak, it sounded like there was more impervious surfaces, and therefore there was likely to be more runoff. Maybe not a lot, but more.
So based on the proposed impervious coverage, they are increasing slightly by about 338 square feet. That's including the building, the driveway, the patios, but some of those proposed surfaces, like the pavers, are going to be, they will have, I believe, they will be permeable. So based on the impervious calculation, it is increasing slightly, but none of it will not be discharging into the creek. It will, most of it needs to be retained on site, and what is not will be discharged into the street.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Anything to add, Scott? Okay, so we don't know much about the, yes, Jill.
I do. I just want to remind everybody else, though, that obviously we were just talking how there's an existing condition with a home. The new condition with a home adds the bioretention facility, which is not on the site now.
So there's more impermeable surfaces, but less off-site discharge. That's the model that we're operating under for this. That's the theory of the development. Got it. Okay, thank you. Also, with respect to drainage, do we know if the incision is a rapidly changing form or a gradually changing form? The context here is that back in, I think it was 2013 or maybe it was 2008, I've forgotten. There's a house slightly north of this that got an after-the-fact coastal development permit for putting in an unpermitted rock wall. And the analysis of that at the time said that it was unlikely to cause scour. But a symptom of scour is exactly the kind of incision that's described as in this ISMND as the condition of the project. And so I just wonder if we have any history of the nature of this incision, if it speaks to bank stability.
So currently, based on the retention basin, it will be slightly sloped. It won't be deep enough. Well, we don't, the calculation, we're gonna request calculation. So they need at least 4% to be retained on site for a 2-year storm event. I don't think it will be overflowing into the top of bank, which will create that scour that you're concerned about.
Yeah, I think I understand. I'll defer the discussion about that until later. I'm actually worried about scour resulting from the lateral motion of the stream as opposed to sheet wash going down the bank side. But we can talk about that later. It sounds like there's not any more information about that. Is that correct? Okay. In that case, if there are no other questions, I'd like to open the public hearing and find out if Bridget or Jill, if we have any speakers to this item.
We do. The first is thanks. The first is we have the applicant, I think wishing to speak, Nicholas French. We also have the architect. So let me just allow Nicholas and then we'll go from there.
Thank you. We appreciate we hope you heard the questions and you can address them to some extent in your comments. We're interested. Thank you very much.
Most definitely. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again for the time. My name is Nicholas French. I'm here with my wife, Melissa French. We have owned the property at 2909 Champs-Élysées since 2009. So I think the good news is a lot of the questions you have right now, I probably have the most historical knowledge out of anybody in terms of what happens in terms of flooding, et cetera. I guess I have some comments to make, but I think it might make most sense maybe to jump into Sarah's questions. Would that be helpful? Is that a good place to start?
I think that's a great place to start.
Okay, so for anyone who enjoys the Pacific Ocean, I'm sure we all agree that it's not the warmest ocean. So when our 4 and 3.5, or when our 3 and 4.5-year-old sons get out of the ocean, they're chilly. So when from the ocean, we would walk back to our house, which is about 2 blocks away. And what better way to warm up than to get into our swimming pool in the backyard? So the swimming pool sort of doubles as a hot tub. We plan to keep it fairly warm, but we're not living there right now because of the project timeline, but we're over on the coast every week basically. But the pool is going to be intricate for our backyard because that's how we're going to warm up after enjoying the ocean for the day, right? So that's sort of the impetus for having the pool in general. It's not going to be a lap pool or anything ridiculous. It's going to be just a larger than average in-ground pool that's going to be kept warm so we can all enjoy it after a nice day at the beach. Yeah, it's not going to be a pool. It's going to be a large hot tub. Regarding Chairman Hernandez, I believe, his questions regarding flooding. Yeah, that's a great question and totally legitimate. We've owned the property since 2009 and gone through several large floods, as we all know, living on the coast. And we have never once had a flood, right? No flood on that property. But I do agree, right? That creek does get a good amount of water through it, but it goes right kind of down past the property. But that's also one of the reasons we're actually excited about taking the property outside of that riparian buffer, because we're actually moving the structure that's currently really close to the creek. We're moving that away from the creek. So I mean, to me, I don't see how that's not a good thing. But in terms of flooding, I mean, we as homeowners are going to have zero concern of that because we've owned the property for 11 years now. And as we've owned it, we haven't lived there. I've had one single tenant at that property. They've loved living there. Actually, they love it so much they even got involved with town. So I know they're involved with some of the different town committees and volunteer organizations. So same family living in that property for 11 years, zero flooding. Regarding plants, yeah, it's a great question, Sarah. We're still really open on that. The requirement was to get a landscaping plan submitted. So we're super flexible in how we kind of go through that. There's definitely things that we don't want, but in terms of plantings, like we're fairly flexible on that. So regarding the drainage, the grading and drainage plan, so just so you kind of have a background of who we are and what we do, right? We love being local. Like we literally buy our fish from the fish market in Hector every week. All of the vendors we're using for this property are pretty much local. The drainage and grading plan is being done by the geotech that's in Half Moon Bay that I've known for quite a long time, Sigma Prime. You guys probably know Charlie. So he's going to be the guy that's going to be in charge of all the geotech and drainage and grading work. So I feel really confident that if anyone knows Half Moon Bay, it's going to be Charlie. So those sort of answer the questions you guys have had so far. But again, just to back up as who we are and why we're doing this project, we started this project back in August of 2015. So it's a 5-year coming project. I've worked with Scott the whole time, gone through several layers of environmental reports. And so you understand it, I'm sure Scott will agree that, for us, we've always wanted to do everything above board. We wanted to make sure that we sort of addressed every environmental question. We want to make sure that we're building a good, sustainable house for the area, right? That's important to us. It's important to our neighbors. It's important to the community. This isn't a property that's just going to sit there and not be used, right? This is going to be our home. And like I said, a long time coming. This meeting is, we're excited about this meeting tonight. Additionally, we care about the environment. That's why we like this location so much. Just to give you some background, if we thought we could have bought a property in Half Moon Bay that was done, we wouldn't go through this 5 years of pain going through this planning process because, quite frankly, it hasn't been fun. But we absolutely love the location. And we've looked for other properties and we can't find any spot we like better. We love the creek next door. We love the eucalyptus open space next to us. We love our cul-de-sac. We like the fact that, by the way, every single house around us is 2 stories, not most of them, every single one. I think our house is actually going to be one of the smaller houses on the street, just for what it's worth. But we've really maintained that we want to kind of take care of the habitat and the environmental aspects of our area. And again, as I mentioned, it's been the same tenant living in that house for us for 11 years. Not that it matters. But they've been great people. We've stayed in touch about knowing what's going on with the neighborhood. It's been important to me that I kind of know what's going on because I knew at some point it was going to be our home. And quite frankly, just 5 minutes ago, the tenant messaged me just to wish us good luck on this meeting tonight. So anyway, so yeah, super excited about the project. We think it's actually going to be a really great addition to that location. And we've worked really hard to make sure we plan something that hopefully is acceptable to the Planning Commission. Thank you. Oh, on top of that, really quick, I also have our architect and the biologist on the call to help answer any questions, to hopefully resolve any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. French. We may get to them, and I appreciate that. Are there any other speakers on this item other than the architect and biologist that are available?
Yes, the first one I have is Irma Morawietz. One moment.
Very good, and welcome back, Ms. Morawietz.
Hi there.
Hi.
Looks like a beautiful house. I just have one question. What is the procedure or for like fireplaces? Are they like wood burning or is it electric? And is there a ban? I have a question about
that. We may need to get a clarification on part of that question, but we will address that. Normally, we don't have a dialogue. So if you have other, why don't we get them all? And then when we close the public hearing, we'll come back and address them. And if we have a lack of clarity, we'll ask you again. Would that be okay?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Let me just. Next, we have Janet Leonard. Let me allow her.
Is it safe to assume that Irma has asked all of her questions?
I believe so. Irma, I'm allowing you to talk.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions? I'm sorry to cut you off. I'm sorry to
no, not for this. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you, Bridget.
Yeah. Okay, Janet, I'm going to allow her to speak. There you go.
Welcome, Janet.
Yep, you're off the mic. You're good.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
Should be able to talk. Oh, I lost her. Where did she go? I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. It jumped back. There you go.
Hello. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I'm Jan Leonard. I'm the neighbor to the south. And I've got a couple of general questions and I just wanted to start with one comment. The survey information and the plans indicate that the existing wooden fence represents the southern boundary of that property. Now, since we moved into the house at 2905, neighbors told us that at the time our house was built, Gordon Kloss, the builder of the existing house, was concerned that it was encroaching on his property, so he put up the fence, and the owners of the house, our house, the builders of our house, had a survey done and established that in fact Gordon's fence was a few inches onto our property line. So I'm concerned that as to how those lot lines were established. Second concern, as a biologist, I'm concerned about this retention. I mean, the retention basin is a great idea. It would be great, but we know from living here all these years that that bank of Naples Creek is eroding. And on a wet year, erodes very quickly. So my concern is to what's to prevent erosion from destroying that retention basin there at next to the creek. And discharging water onto the street as it is, whenever we have heavy rains, Naples Creek tends to overflow down Champs-Élysées, which is why the city's put in sandbags and so forth at various times. So those are my major concerns.
Okay, thank you very much for addressing us about that. That's very helpful. Anyone else, Bridget?
No. Other
Okay,
than, oh wait, Mike Reddy is next.
Mike Reddy. Welcome, Mr. Reddy.
Should be able to unmute if he'd like to speak. I don't know if he, oh, he is actually, I apologize. He is a biologist. I didn't know if he wanted to speak. He did raise his hand along with the architect.
So we'll get to both. Would the commission like to hear from the architect and biologist first before asking follow-up questions?
Through the chair.
Yes.
I am always concerned about questions of flooding. And one of the neighbors very recently just commented on issues of flooding in this neighborhood, which, having been on this planning commission for about 5 or so years, I've heard many reports of flooding in the immediate neighborhood. So I really want to have staff respond to the question of flooding. And I really want to make sure that we're dotting the I's and crossing the T's here, because I always worry about that in this neighborhood.
Commissioner Hernandez, do you think that the architect has anything to say about that before we go to staff, or did you want to just?
I'm reiterating my concern that I raised earlier that I'd like staff to address. I don't believe the architect is most likely technically qualified to answer the question, but I want to make sure that we address this issue, because I'm worried about that for this project, especially since one of the neighbors who has context has raised the same issue that I've seen many people raise in this neighborhood over the years.
Yeah, erosion and flooding are two different sides of the same coin. It has to do with the capacity of the stream, and that is an interesting question. But I want to give the applicant a chance to weigh in with any other information before we bring it back to staff, if the applicant has.
So Chair Benjamin, just a clarification. I apologize. I got two of the people in the public mixed up. So Mike Reddy is part of the public. So if we could have him speak, and then we do in fact have the biologist and the architect here who have raised their hand. But
thank you very much.
I will let Mike speak, and then we'll go from there as far as letting the other two chime in.
Mr. Reddy, we apologize for the confusion.
I apologize for that.
Okay, yeah. So one of the individuals on our cul-de-sac, Mike Becker, lives right across the street from the new project. And Mike has had a history of sandbagging this creek for many, many years. And I suggest that you do talk to him. Can you hear me, or am I off?
No, we can hear you just fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. And so with all of us here living on the cul-de-sac, the trees in the grove of eucalyptus, I think that the fourth tree has fallen down here from not so many years. And one of them is up at Pullman. Pullman has invested, the people who live on Pullman have invested in building up a sandbagged wall. And that wall was breached one year, not so long ago, whether it be 1 year ago or 2 years ago. And the water poured down Roosevelt Boulevard coming from Pullman. So there is a big water issue when all the storms are lined up just right. And I didn't want to pass on that. The other thing is that most of us here are worried about these trees falling down. And on the same back-to-back lot that Mr. French is talking about, Mr. Hernandez had a tree fall on his house last year. And he was lucky to get away with less damage than what could have done. So there's some really big things to to analyze about this building permit and for the safety of the person of building a house here. And he should know the history of what's gone on already. And so anyway, that's my little tidbit for tonight. I'm sure there's more. And I think a picture's worth 1,000 words. If anybody on the Planning Commission would drive down and have a good look at it and see for themselves that the creek is very docile looking right now, but in wintertime, it has come up over the sidewalk on the west side of Champs-Élysées in past years when we've had a good rainfall. That's the end of my story tonight.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Reddy. We appreciate your comments. Bridget, have any additional public speakers rejoined the conversation?
We have none other than the architect that still has his hand raised. Other than that, no.
All right, Commissioner Hernandez, I acknowledge that I also want to hear from our staff about sediment transport and the management of the various aspects of hydrology in the area. But with your, barring your objection, I'd like to hear from the architect in case he can shed additional light before we have that conversation. Would that
I have
be
no objection, although I share a surname with somebody who apparently had some kind of tree fall on their property. And I want to clarify that as far as I know, I'm not that person who has had a tree fall on their property. I've had tree issues, which I've managed, but I am not that person unless there's some other thing that the one of the Mr. Reddy was speaking about earlier.
Right, so you don't have an alias and you have no conflict of interest. We got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if the architect has still got his hand up and would like to speak, I'd be happy to recognize him now.
Okay, well, yes, let me allow him to speak. Oops.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
We can hear you.
Okay,
Welcome.
great. No one's really expressed any architectural comments. So I'll just keep my comments short. I just wanted to say one thing is the house we designed here was difficult because we had to stay out of the 30-foot buffer from the creek, which took takes a big chunk of the property away from our use and gives it to future drainage and to the riparian corridor. And that area that was taken for the riparian corridor is at the front of the lot, and we're required to have 2 parking spaces. So it was really a challenge to get a garage and a carport and not have this house look just like a parking garage. So what we did was to make the carport appear like a nice front porch, and I think that was a successful design. And then just to address the drainage, we'll when we're doing the construction drawings for this, our civil engineer will do a grading and drainage plan, and we'll do the drainage such that the runoff is less than the existing situation. And most of these comments about the drainage in the creek and the trees are not on this parcel. It's on the adjacent lands, and we're not making any of these issues worse. We're making them better. So I don't think it should fall on Mr. French to burden him with this larger drainage issue that's really generated upstream. So that's my comments.
Okay, thank you very much. And let's see, was there another applicant representative who wanted to speak, Bridget?
a biologist online, but he's not raising his hand.
Perhaps
So-
there'll be some questions
Oh.
later.
Yes, he is. We can allow him to speak.
All right.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
I don't need to speak. There was a reference to another biologist, so I just wanted to raise my hand and say that I'm here.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks,
If any-
Dana.
Thank you. I know
You
I
may-
have a dual name. It's okay.
Sorry.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Since we have a relatively light agenda, with barring objection, I'm going to leave the public hearing open so that we can go back to the applicants and any of the speakers. It sounds like there is some interesting history that wasn't in the staff report that might be available, that there's no way that Scott would have known about that. But they've come out and they've brought insights, and it's helpful to have it as part of the record. So we may want to explore that further.
I just want to make a note that there is someone who spoke earlier, Janet Leonard, that is raising her hand again. So I just wanted you to be aware of that.
Commissioners, do you object if there's something significant that she can add to the conversation? If we let her go again, she was less than 3 minutes her first time.
I have no objection.
No objection.
No objection.
Ms. Leonard, you have the floor.
There you go. Oh. She was just unmuted. There you go.
Okay. My neighbor, John Hernandez, is here with me and would like to speak.
Is this the John Hernandez, as in the John Hernandez Bridge?
That is correct there, Chairman Benjamin.
Welcome. It's an honor to speak with you again, sir.
Well, Jan is helping me out because I'm not any good on these computer things. So far, I think it needs a lot to be desired to iron these things out. One of the, last night I read all the paperwork for about 3 hours, and I came up on the agenda report on page 3 of 10. It said the house facing east, partially developed with a 2-story residence, and my house is a single resident story, not a 2-story. Just thought I'd throw that in so he could correct his paperwork. And somewhere on the maps, they showed Pullman, on the maps you can barely see some of this stuff, and it referred to Pullman as Boulevard, and it's Avenue, not Boulevard, just to bring his paperwork into line better. And let's get back into the flooding. To my knowledge, I've never seen any kind of floods going down Champs-Élysées in the 40 years. That's because it jumps the creek bank at Pullman. As it jumps out of Pullman, it rushes down Pullman over to Roosevelt, down Roosevelt to Naples Avenue, and then turns right and goes back in the creek. And like I said, when it jumps the bank, a lot of water. And about 4 years ago, the tree in the bank at Pullman cul-de-sac fell over into the middle of the street, tore out the curb and the bank completely. I've been talking to the city of Half Moon Bay now for 4 years, trying to get somebody to come out and do something with our sandbags or cement bags that we've been piling up for about 30 years. And John Dowdy was the last that I spoke to about it. And he keeps telling me, maybe next year we'll have some money, maybe next year we'll have some money. The engineers have been out to look at it with him, and they decided they need to do something, but it's not going to be a small little project. So I'm still waiting for the repair. The second tree fell about a year ago as Mike Ruddy was talking, and landed on the middle of my house. And that's because the tree kind of eroded the base of the roots to that eucalyptus. And the only reason it didn't go through the roof is because one of the other trees had a big limb hanging out like an arm, holding out to support the tree falling. And it took it about 4 hours before the limb finally broke, which let the tree kind of gently hit the roof. And it only cost me $1,700. So I was pleased about that. And shortly after that, the city came by and did a lot of trimming. And they, like I said, did a lot of work, but there still needs to be a lot to be done. And then about the erosion in Naples Creek, about the back end of this French property line, the creek from Highway 1 to there is about 4 feet deep. And just about where that fence is, the back of his property, then it jumps down another 4 feet from erosion. And of course, everybody has looked at Champ's cul-de-sac. The creek is, lapping away at the curb that's there. So it needs to be addressed quite a bit, the creek anyway. And that's about all that I have. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. It's always nice to speak with you. I remember meeting you at the end of Naples and Roosevelt and watching you clear some drainage work during some of our bigger rainstorms while I was out doing other matters. So thank you for your service to the city.
I remember that clearly.
So no other speakers, Bridget?
No other speakers.
All right. So we're back to the Planning Commission, and we heard a lot about the drainage hydraulic functions, and I want to be sure we try to satisfy the questions that have come up. It sounds to me like there were different perspectives on the sources of the water, whether it was coming down Naples or whether it was entering Naples from Pullman. Quite a bit going on there based on the experience that we heard. So I want to, without necessarily drawing the presumption that this is a problem that this applicant has to fix, I want to be clear that I'm not suggesting that, but I want to be sure we've illuminated the issue as it pertains to the proposed development, and recognizing that there's a problem, but distinguishing between the approach to resolving the problem and consideration of this project and the nexus of the problem with this project. So if we could keep our focus there, or if I can get guidance if I'm stepping too far afield in the opinion of staff or our city attorney, I'm certainly happy to change the course of the discussion. But with that, I'm hoping the city engineer or Scott can give us a little bit of guidance about what they think. It sounds to me like the notion here is that this project isn't going to add, it's not going to reduce the width of the area that the creek can use. So it has the potential to begin to produce a better meander belt that might reduce some of the problems. But if the flooding is coming from elsewhere and running across, it does sound complicated. Do you have insight into this that either of you would care to share? Or Jill, we understand that from the additional condition that was proposed late this afternoon, that this may be a subject that needs additional investigation.
Yes, so currently we have the preliminary drainage for the property. We added a couple of comments to ensure that we get the proper design for the property itself. So the detention basin, we're going to have, the applicant needs to provide a geotech report for the detention basin to ensure that there's proper soils. And we're also going to be requiring final grading and drainage landscape plans for this property for the construction drawings. So we are retaining, currently as it is, there is no retention on site. So we are adding an extra measure to ensure that we retain all of the stormwater on site. It's not increasing any additional discharge. It's into the street. It's actually retaining most of it on site because they are demolishing and rebuilding. They are expected to comply with the San Mateo County stormwater permit. And that includes, because it is under 10,000 square feet, that includes just regular site design, low impact development site measures, which includes the self-retaining area. As far as the creek, we had a storm drain master plan that analyzed all the water courses throughout Half Moon Bay. I can go through that data and let you know what the deficiencies are and what improvement considerations could be proposed for this ditch. But like the applicant stated, he is staying within his property line. He's not going into the creek. Any work within the creek has to have special permitting from the Army Corps and things like that. So it's a little bit more technical if we go into the creek and do any improvement there.
Thank you for the comments. I'll withhold my comments right now and invite the other commissioners to weigh in with their comments and perhaps come back to raise some of my questions about that later. Who would like to continue? Commissioner Hernandez, did you want to get back in there?
Sure, I'll jump right in. So, again, my namesake, the esteemed John Hernandez, has raised issues about this property that somewhat tied to drainage, somewhat tied to issues that I've already raised. And I've got two general things that I want to look at. Is one, I understand the position that the architect and the applicant has taken on this project. I just say, great, give us a release, give the city a legal release if you feel confident in what you've done. And I would like to get our city attorney's position on this because I'm skeptical. I look at figure 2 in the document and I see the way that the soil is breaking away from the property line in figure 2. And I am skeptical that this project, given all the things that we're dealing with climate change, is going to continue to be something that is, like they haven't had any issues in 20 or 30 years, but I'm confident that they're going to have some issues in the next 10 to 20 years because we're all going to have issues in the next 10 to 20 years. And given the elevation and the relation to the creek bed, there's all kinds of unforeseen things that are going to happen. So I really want to have our city attorney give me feedback on this. And, like if the applicant feels confident in what they've done, is a release a reasonable thing for us to say, okay, we can address that and include it in the conditions of approval?
Well, by golly, she's here and she can probably tell us. You've got the floor, Winter.
Chair Benjamin. Yeah, and thanks, Commissioner Hernandez. There is already a hold harmless provision in the resolution. It's under E, validity and expiration of permits, and it's E6. And I think this covers exactly what you are asking about. There's even a paragraph at the end that specifically covers flooding claims. So the applicant would be required to agree to hold the city harmless from any flooding claims resulting from the city's approval.
As always, I am humbled by your great legal advice. Thank you.
As Persians
Sorry,
say,
I should
you can
have
ask for
jumped in
something better.
earlier. I was waiting for my moment to respond to the question, and so sorry for the dramatic non-answer until now. But yes, there is a condition in there. Thank you.
What else do you want to reload, Rick, or while we go back and let Commissioner Polgar work through her question?
No,
through the chair, can I ask you?
Can I finish my thought before?
Well, it's a
before Sarah?
clarification about, you referred to figure 2, and I didn't know where you meant, and so I wanted to look at that.
I was looking at the image and I saw the soil breaking away from the property line. Like you can see the street level, you can see the property, and you can see this strange soil pattern in figure 2 in the lower left-hand corner. So if you want to take a look at that. I'm sorry?
Is this in the ISMND, the figure you're talking about?
Goodness gracious. Let me just
clarify. It's actually in the staff report.
It's in the staff report, yes.
Okay.
So why don't people take a look at that? Because Sarah is an expert on this, and sadly Brian Holt's not here. But if you can look at the staff report, Sarah, and I will just add one other comment and give you a chance to respond. So the architect made a comment about nobody's given him feedback on the design. I love the design. I think it's fantastic. I think the project fits into the space. It meets all of the things that we've put in place from a design perspective. I think the way you've managed the space works really well. The only concern I have is frankly, it's so like discreet and technical, but it's I'll mention it, is when you go to the entrance to the house, you've got a column and you've got a window that is obstructed by a column on the front entrance to the house. I assume that window must be frosted, or it must be some kind of entryway where nobody's really going to care about the fact that there's a column right in front of it. But other than that, I think the design is very thoughtful, very careful, and very interesting, and it fits into the space. And having spent a lot of time working on design patterns in the city of Half Moon Bay, I think this is a good project from an architectural review committee perspective.
And with that, I'd like to hand the floor to Sarah. Commissioner Polgar, you have the floor.
Okay. I'll just note very quickly, I too like the design a lot. So a couple of things. I'm concerned about the plan for this retention basin and where it's located. And then also, it did sound to me like the pool is in ground. I heard in ground, meaning like there's going to be excavation to get the pool in. So this is a site where I think things, I applaud the plan. I mean, it definitely does a very nice job of moving out of the buffer area. And I totally understand that drainage features are allowed, that's an allowable use or development in the buffer, within the riparian buffer. But this is unfortunately an area that's just like prone to unraveling, it seems like. I mean, that's kind of what's happening. The type of vegetation that's in there is really not helpful for retaining structure of riparian banks, and so it's not going to help it's actually probably not going to help to preserve the eucalyptus and the what minimal plants can grow underneath it. So it's a site where it's not the landowner's fault, and but I am very concerned about by digging more into this area for the retention basin and potentially for the pool. Less likely though, it's a little bit further away from the creek. I just think that's something that I'm not sure that's a great solution in terms of I could see that the disturbance could lead to having the bank, it sounds like once it starts to unravel and erode, you get water getting in, and it's gonna reach the creek, and you're gonna get sloughing of the banks. Really, that's what I see as potential based on the photos. I was actually looking at some photos in the ISMND, the report, this initial study had some pictures that were pretty clear how much you can really see the incision. So those are my concerns primarily. I felt like Mr. French's response about the landscaping totally makes sense. It sounds like they're flexible to make changes within reason, so that's fine. I do think it's worthwhile addressing the question about the fireplace and whether that's something, because there's just a lot of concern obviously now about fire and the thought of an outdoor I think I understood this correctly, that there's an outdoor fireplace, and just to really understand what are the rules around that, and also that we're not permitting something that would then not ever be, they couldn't ever use it because there's restrictions on using maybe it's a gas fireplace and it's all moot. But definitely want to address the issue about the pool, and also understand how the permitting for that would be inclusive of this project, or is that a separate thing that would be permitted later? Because if it is indeed involves some excavation, I mean, I don't know how deep a pool they're talking about. If it were like 3 feet or something like that, you'd still have to excavate, I don't know, like probably 400 cubic yards or 300 cubic yards. It's just, so it's just to be consider that. And I'm not as concerned about the pool for the erosion, but definitely the retention basin. So those are my thoughts at this point, but I reserve the right to ask more questions. I keep realizing as other commissioners and others make comments that I have lots of questions.
There is a wonderful synergy in a planning commission, and I appreciate that quality of this group. Commissioner Ruddick, Vice Chair Ruddick, lend us your wisdom.
Thank you. I think there are good aspects to this project to admire. I think the design is very attractive. This house will fit in well with the eclectic neighborhood there. Removing the parts of the current structure that are in the buffer zone is a good step forward. Yes, my concern is about the proximity of the new house to the riparian buffer. I think in the 2 years that I've been on planning commission now, this project calls for development as close to the edge of the buffer zone as I have seen. And I think the plans show that the parts of the house on the northern side will go to within millimeters of the southern edge of the buffer zone. Scott and I exchanged some emails on this yesterday and today because I was trying to understand the process. Excuse me, and he reassured me a little bit that that there is a robust process involving the biologist prior to demolition and then construction, being responsible for placing the exclusionary fencing, and the city enforcing that as the project goes forward, which is good. I think they're strong mechanisms. I visited that site this morning, and if it had been up to me to determine the midpoint of the creek, I wouldn't really have had an idea. And I know I'm not an expert, right? So I don't put myself in the feet of the biologist, but it added to my concern a little bit. Somebody's got to do a professional job at locating the midpoint of the stream, and then do a professional job of making sure that the exclusionary fencing gets put in the right place. And I guess I'd just like even a little bit more reassurance that as this project goes forward, we'd have the right safeguards in place for those items. And I think that's all I have to comment on right now.
Okay, thank you. Let me offer a couple of comments, and noticing that we're approaching 9 o'clock, and I recognize that the applicant may have some additional thoughts to be responsive, and I think we all might benefit from a brief bio break at around 9 o'clock. But let me get some of my comments on the record, some of which are probably easy and some of which may be more complex. In the I'll call them blueprint pictures, even though they're black and white, they're gray print. I noticed the lines for the building envelope, and in some angles it looked like it was the eaves and the dormers that were intersecting. And in other cases, it looked like there might have been more substantial parts of the building intersecting. So I was unclear on whether this building completely conforms with the building envelope requirements. Do you know the pictures that I'm talking about, Scott?
Yes, I'd be happy to screen share, and we can bring up the elevations here. And
I may be the only person who doesn't know this, so forgive my slowness.
I have them if you want them, Scott. I can pull it up.
Yeah, I'm looking at figure 3, for example.
I got it. Okay.
On the right-hand side.
okay, can you see the elevation on screen?
Yeah.
So I'm showing the right side south elevation. And because the stairway onto the second story actually encroaches outside of the maximum building envelope. And this is an allowed encroachment. So they're taking advantage of the 15 horizontal feet that's allowed to encroach on the sides. So this may be what you were referring to, that clearly encroaches outside of the maximum building envelope.
I'm looking at figure 3, proposed front elevation of the new residence. This is on page 4 of 10 of the staff report. And I know there's a light picture in the, yeah, that one will do. The front west elevation, I think. Right. So look at the right-hand side of that picture and tell me we're okay.
Yes, so kind of comparing the previous elevation that I showed, this is the front elevation that shows the same area that encroaches outside of the side maximum building envelope. So this is in fact an allowed encroachment, and Perfect. They're not exceeding the 15 horizontal feet that's allowed to encroach.
If it's allowed, I have no questions about it. I'm not a wizard at that particular part of our code. So I defer to you and thank you for answering that. The standard of review at the Planning Commission for this is conformance with the LCP and the zoning ordinance, along with these standards that we were just talking about, for example. And I know that with respect to erosion and flooding, our LCP has policies in Chapter 4 that describe the requirements that development have to address. So I just mentioned this by way of framing the concerns that Commissioner Hernandez and Commissioner Polgar have addressed. Policy 4-9 says that all development shall be designed and constructed to prevent increases in runoff that would erode natural drainage courses. Flows from graded areas shall be kept to an absolute minimum, not exceeding the normal rate of erosion and runoff from that of undeveloped land. Stormwater outfalls, gutters, and conduits shall be dissipated. So that speaks to the bank stability standard. And perhaps there's a zoning ordinance counterpart to that, but that's LCP policy. And then there are policies with respect to not aggravating flooding. I'll just mention that this creek appears as a blue line stream in Army Corps of Engineer and before that War Department maps. So it does qualify as a natural drainage course. And my understanding from the presentation is that we were not going to exceed the natural flows, or at least the flows that pre-existed on the property. The standard in the policy refers to the the flows, let me just go back and look. I believe it, that 4.9 says, yeah, it prevents increases in runoff. The normal version of that from undeveloped land. So the standard, if I look at 4-9 properly, is the runoff that would result from undeveloped land. Perhaps staff will have a different take on that. With respect to the liability and safety issues, with respect to the trees that are losing their root structures, this, like the incision of the channel, is an indication that the stream needs to correct itself. And the way it does that is by incising until the banks expand. That's why those trees are losing their structure. I wonder if the architect or the applicant gave thought to trees that are more effective at retaining banks, for example, arroyo willow, as an alternative. Maybe I should stop there and give I believe Mr. French wanted to speak earlier. We've given quite a bit of information to him, or perhaps we could take just a couple of minutes to consider the comments that have come up, maybe have a quick 5-minute break or 10-minute break, let's say, so we can catch our breath. We haven't talked about biological resources much yet, but I think these hydrologic issues are significant enough, and we've had enough public comment on them that it's worth taking a little bit of time and not rushing to judgment on that. So barring objection, I'd like to call for a 10-minute recess and resume at 9:10. With no objection, we are in recess for 10 minutes. most everybody. All right, so perhaps I should invite Scott or Jill to reflect on the comments and see if they can float some interesting ideas. Jill or Scott, do you want to weigh in on what you've heard? Maybe synthesize some thoughts?
Commissioner Benjamin, we just need another minute with.
Oh, of course.
We're wrapping up.
Okay, that's fine.
Discussion. We want to be very responsive and understand it's getting late, and we took a little longer than we thought. Thanks.
That is fine. Barring objection, let's give her another couple of minutes, please. Had his hand up earlier, and he may benefit from your ideas, or conversely. Would you like to speak first, or would you like him to speak first?
We would really like to hear the applicant.
Bridget, if the applicant, Mr. French, is still with us, I'm sure he is, if he would still like to speak, we would like to hear from him.
Okay.
Hey, everyone, can you hear me okay?
We can, Mr. French. Thank you for letting us work through this. You can see the logistics of the meeting are a little complicated.
Oh yeah, no, I appreciate it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work backwards through the questions because I want to make sure I get to every single point. So starting with you, Chairman Benjamin, regarding planting specific trees, like to kind of like mitigate the creek, the top of the bank, you know, quite frankly, we're not opposed to that, but you have to understand, we've been told that we cannot plant anything in the riparian buffer. So as it stands right now, I can't even touch it. So if you guys want to change that rule, great. But as of right now, you got to understand my hands are tied, right? I'm not allowed to touch that riparian buffer. So any planting to mitigate that erosion is out of my hands. I think that would be in the city's hands.
I think we can help you with that, but we'll get there.
Okay, cool. So going back down the list, I also want to make it clear, I think some people have made questions before about bank locations, et cetera, but I want to make it really clear that we've gone with every single vendor that the town has suggested and actually, quite frankly, kind of required, right? So it's a town approved biologist. It's not some arbitrary biologist that I hired on my own. These are approved town resources that are being used. The civil engineer and geologist working on the project is local Half Moon Bay. Sigma Prime has been in that area forever. When I told him about this project, and I've known him for well over a decade, he's a great guy, he's done lots of projects for me. He knew right away about the creek. He knew right away about what was going to be necessary. I can't imagine a better geotech civil engineer working on this project than Charlie Kissick. Regarding Sarah's question, about, also regarding the retention basin, I think it's also really important to point out that the retention basin is going to be designed to the city requirements, and we're hiring the experts. Like, I'm not an expert. I'm guessing none of us here are experts about retention basins, and I'm going to lean on the people that I'm paying that are experts in this field to make sure we're designing something that's safe. By no means do I want to build a property that's not going to be safe for my family. That would be insane. Regarding Sarah's question on the fireplace, quite frankly, this is the outside fireplace. I'm assuming it's going to be gas because my understanding was that wood burning is illegal. So by no means do I think we're going to do a wood burning fireplace. And even if we could, I wouldn't want to do that. So that's planning on being an outside gas fireplace. Regarding the pool, it's going to be an above grade with seat wall, and the depth of the pool is not going to exceed 3 feet. So again, this isn't a lap pool. It's not a diving pool. It's just a relaxing pool after being at the beach all day and being cold in our 70-degree water on a good day. Yeah, it's really just a hot tub, right? It's just a large hot tub that we're going to build on site, right? Instead of buying a separate unit. But really, I think the good news is that a lot of these questions don't really relate to the actual project itself. It's really having to do with the flooding. And I do want to go back to that just briefly because to Commissioner Hernandez's question earlier, I can tell you flat out for a fact, I've owned that property since 2009. It has never flooded. Has the creek overflown? Yes. Has my property flooded? No. Top of the bank is 32 feet. The back of my property is 36 feet. The floor level height of this house is 36.5 feet. It's well above that property bank level. I think that's really important. Now, a lot of this conversation, which I'm glad we're having this conversation, I have brought this up before with the town. These are questions that are not on my property. I'm hoping that my project might be a catalyst for getting things done on the creek, but I hope you guys will agree and women will agree that it's not directly related to my project. And I hope you don't hold up this project of mine that my family's been working for 5 years because of the creek, which by the way, I do hope you do so. I hope this town does address it. And again, I hope this is the catalyst, but it's not on my property. And by the way, one more important thing I want to point out, one of the reasons that we're sitting here in September of 2020 versus September of 2019 is that the biologist wanted to go through, I don't remember the rules, but there was a requirement to go through an actual winter so that the biologist could see the sort of the biology of that location through a winter. And as you recall, last winter was pretty wet. I think it was actually one of our wettest years in a long time. And our biologists work through that winter. So there is really up-to-date information on kind of what happens from an environmental standpoint, from the creek standpoint, et cetera. But I think I just really want to point out that I think that creek, I hope you address it. The creek is separate from my house. My house does not flood. It's well above grade. And I hope I've answered all your questions, but I'm definitely available to answer any more questions I can help with.
Thank you, Mr. French. We're working through them, and we may want to get back and continue the conversation. But right now, I'd like to recognize staff to weigh in to see if they can synthesize what has been heard to date. Who would like to speak?
Hey, hello, Chair. I was wondering if I can quickly step in and just give you a quick...
I'm sorry, who is speaking?
This is Evelyn, sorry.
Oh, I'm going to invite, if that's Jill, is that the, yes, okay, very good. Thank you very much, Evelyn. Please take the floor.
Yes, so I went through and looked at our storm drain master plan. They did take data for this ditch for the Roosevelt Creek. And in the ditch, it has a 25-year capacity of flow. So there is a deficiency further downstream towards the outfall where it overtops at 100-year flow, but this is further downstream from where the property is located. So currently there is no flooding and it doesn't overtop at that location. Some recommendations, we need to maintain periodically this ditch just to maintain its current capacity. The issue is because it is a sensitive location and it's overgrown, it's a sensitive habitat, it's much more difficult to do maintenance in this ditch. We need like a permit, we need a biologist on site who ensure that the maintenance workers are doing the appropriate cleaning and having the appropriate equipment. So it's more difficult to go in and maintain it, but as of right now, there is no localized flooding near that the property. It's further downstream and it's only during 100-year flow. As far as the retention, that can be moved. It is a preliminary design, so it could be moved further south of the property, further south towards the garage or closer to the carport. It's just a matter of getting the engineer on board. He's already on board, I believe, just getting him to finalize the design with the proper calculations to ensure that we need at least 90% of the runoff to be retained on site. And that wraps it up.
Thank you, Evelyn. Jill or Scott? Or not?
Go ahead, Scott.
I don't have a whole lot to add. I just, wanted to emphasize that, that we probably need to focus on, this project and how it relates to, the baseline of the, existing house and, what the improvements would do as far as, modifying that drainage and, yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add.
Thank you. Jill?
That's fine. Well, we'd like to hear your deliberation and then we can.
Okay. So I have a question for Winter. I cited policy 4-9 earlier, and it refers to all development, not replacement development or extensions of development. And I'm trying, at the same time, I recognize that there was a house here before this, that there were surfaces, there was a certain amount of drainage that was beyond what was natural, I would imagine. Because I'm not sure when the house was built, but my guess is it was built before the city had a certified LCP. So I don't want to misapply this policy, but I also want to be clear about what the standard of review is. Can you shed light on that, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Benjamin. We did talk on the break about how the city has applied this in the past, because of course the city has the ability to interpret its policies here. And it sounds like there, at least among those of us here at this meeting, we're not aware of a circumstance in which we've had to apply policy 4-9 to redevelopment as opposed to new construction. So we don't have a lot of history to go on there. However, I do think it would be reasonable to interpret this to mean new development, given that we're talking about the subsequent language talks about not increasing from an undeveloped state to a developed state. And here, of course, we've also had the subsequent development, a lot of thinking done with the stormwater pollution prevention programs, the local, the regional NIPD's permits, which, as I believe Evelyn was talking about, the project is required to comply with, and those set out fairly technical requirements when you're increasing impervious surfaces. So that's not a that's not an answer that answers all the questions. I just wanted to provide you with the additional information I have about how the city has or has not applied it in the past.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, do you, Sarah, you were writing notes studiously when we were talking earlier. Do you want to share your ideas?
I guess I certainly hear what Mr. French was talking about in terms of a couple things. One is, when we do have a language with respect to planting or touching any of the vegetation with respect to the riparian buffer area. I think it's the riparian buffer that we talk about. And so he's right that we say, you're not allowed to touch it, essentially. And so, which is somewhat ironic in that really could use a lot of work, frankly. And this is, what Evelyn was referring to in terms of permitting with this type of work is she's totally right. And in fact, because it isn't actually a ditch, when it's blue line, that's a big deal to get permits for. So it's, we're kind of tied, our hands are a little bit tied, because you really do need to maintain something like this, and allowing eucalyptus to just grow and grow and grow as a really bad idea, where you have an eroding their root structure is there's erosion going on. So I feel for the applicant in that respect. I think that's a catch-22. I'll be honest. The clarification about the pool is good, that it's above grade. So I'm hearing that there's not going to be like excavation grading for the pool, and I would have expected that, but because of the plans don't indicate any grading
Excuse me,
values.
Sarah.
Yeah.
Pardon me. If I understood Mr. French correctly, it sounded like it was going to extend 3 feet below grade.
Oh, maybe it is. Oh, yeah. Is Mr. French through the chair? Can we get clarification on that?
Mr. French, can you clarify?
Sure, if I'm unmuted.
You are unmuted.
Oh, I'm unmuted. Oh, great. Okay. So what the architect's proposing is it's an above grade with seat wall. So the total is from the top of seat wall down is 3 feet. So imagine having a glass of wine, right, after a long day, and some people are going to be sitting on the ledge, and some people your feet are going to be on the hardscape. You're going to be sitting down on top of this ledge, right, which is the edge around the pool. And then if you go on the other side, you'd be in the pool. But from where my butt is sitting to the bottom would be 3 feet. So it would be excavation, but we're talking about, less than 2 feet, right? So it's pretty nominal, right? But again, think of it as just a really big, nice hot tub, not really a pool, right? It's lounging, it's relaxing. So it's
2 feet of excavation in order to put in concrete.
Correct.
So the dirt would not go below 2 feet. That's what I'm hearing.
Correct, because the seat wall
more than 2 feet.
Exactly.
Does that answer the question, Sarah?
It does. I think then there needs to be revision to the grading quantities, because I'm not necessarily seeing that in there. Just to be frank, and I don't know that matters in terms of the grading quantities matter in terms of permitting, but I think my other point, while that is, that's not a lot of excavation, I'll grant you that. I don't know that would be the type of thing to necessarily, based on its location, cause a problem in terms of accelerating erosion along the creek. I completely understand that the Sigma Prime has a ton of experience and everything like that. What we're looking at right now in terms of the drawings is like a circle saying retention basin, and it's quite close to where the bank is. And I mean, I hear you about the flooding. What I'm concerned about is that basically you have a bank that's retreating quickly, as far as I can tell. And so I'm worried, and this would be for the property itself. This would be disastrous to lose the creek, like to have that creek bank erode faster, because it would put the property at risk. And so that's what I'm worried about. And right now, all we have is a circle on a drawing with no other information about what it would be. And so while I'm totally not an expert, I worry that if this is some sort of, I mean, when I do sediment retention basins, some of them are pretty big. And so maybe I'm thinking at a different depth and scale, et cetera. But it does concern me. I appreciate Evelyn's point about how maybe it could be moved, and, to away from the creek. I think that would help. The less disturbance close to the creek, the better. I also will say that one of the challenges with a retention basin, at least, and maybe I'm misunderstanding how this one would function, but is that a lot of times they have to be maintained because they can sediment in. And I don't know if that's an issue with it. It's a big issue with the types of projects I do. And so you have to make sure that you can maintain it. And so that that depends on, when it's along a blue line creek, that could be very challenging to make sure you have the permissions to maintain it. So there's just like some things to consider. And I'll admit, these aren't things I'm an expert on, but just based on kind of my knowledge of kind of how erosion unravels. I work a lot on erosion. And so that's why I look at that and get concerned and would want to see a more maybe assurances, or like a kind of at least some idea of how it could be modified to put it out of kind of that proximity to the creek edge. So and all due respect, though, not saying that the folks who are working on this, I fully respect that they know this area. I'm just looking at it and still kind of concerned.
Commissioner Hernandez, did you want to weigh in based on what you've heard so far?
I share Commissioner Polgar's concerns and concerns raised by the neighbors about this project. I do recognize that we have professional staff who are looking at these issues. I'm just skeptical about what we're doing here. I just want to make sure that, we double click on this and make sure that we're really looking at the erosion issues, the drainage issues. We can't unwind these projects easily. And, on the face of it, the hardscape doesn't seem like a big change, but I do want to make sure that when I look at this figure 2 and the eye test, I have concerns. So I just need to make sure that our professional staff have confidence in what we're doing here and that the drainage issues are properly addressed.
So thank you. I'll get to you, Steve, in just a second. Let me just weigh in briefly. What we have here is a very capable staff doing relief pitching, because the Roosevelt or Naples Creek, depending on what you like to call it, is a classic example of what happens when development encroaches into the meander belt of a drainage. It's forced to behave differently than it naturally would. It can't adjust its boundaries properly. And I'm really glad that the setback would be increasing as a result of this project, because I have a feeling that the watercourse is going to use it. And the concern that I have, while I want to be careful not to step beyond what our role is, I think I'm concerned for the applicant's safety and his family's safety, but my primary, our constraints are to not allow a nuisance to be created, and to be sure it's consistent with our zoning ordinance and our local coastal program policies. So if we get too far afield from that, let's be sure to rein ourselves in. That said, it does feel to me like this stream is going to be very challenging to the development that is adjacent to it. And the further they can keep all of their development from it, the better. To the extent that impermeable surfaces could be adapted to be permeable, that would be better. To the extent that water really must be directed away from the stream and find its way into outfalls rather than doing sheet flow down the bankside, that is better. To the extent that the project could be extended to allow, or the conditions of the project could be extended to, and in fact, the draft conditions for drainage already indicate that any additional permits required for drainage safety from other agencies have to be obtained. It would be a short reach from there to say, at least in the buffer areas, if they're wet enough, and perhaps the biologist could speak to that, that maybe we could have some bank stabilizing vegetation. The eucalyptus aren't our friends. Sarah has persuaded me on that subject, although having their trunks down in the drainage is certainly better than extracting them at some level. But if we could produce a vegetation that's more capable of holding the soil, if I were Mr. French, that would certainly be appealing to me. It's not my project, it's his project. But I do think that the erosion is the greater concern. Mr. Hernandez's recounting of the water coming from the Pullman water course is alarming. It sounded like that wasn't coming all the way into this part of the neighborhood, rather that it was running down Roosevelt. I know that the water races down Roosevelt Creek and loads up down at Naples Avenue further downstream. So it seems like there's a fundamental problem, not Mr. French's making, and only marginally. He's in some ways just one of several victims of this problem of insufficient meander belt width. But as we can't change the design of the other houses, but we have an opportunity to try to help this project be as survivable as possible, and without infringing on Mr. French's right to develop what he wants to have. I think we owe that effort. So thank you for bearing with me, Vice Chair Reddick. Your thoughts?
Well, Chair Benjamin, that was what you just said was very well said. Hard to argue with that. I share the concerns that I think the rest of the commission has on flooding and erosion and drainage issues. To the extent I can judge, I think that staff has brought to us proposal that is in conformance with everything that needs to conform with, although one still can't help be concerned about the flooding and drainage and erosional issues when you look at the place and just use common sense. But I guess I'm of a mind where I would welcome a reassurance from staff that the answers to the questions that the commissioners have raised, and reassurance that we're on the right track with permitting this.
Can we plop in a few more thoughts before we get before we seek the reassurance?
Oh, of course, no limit at all.
I wonder how in particular, Commissioner Polgar would feel about the potential benefits of the pool being out of the ground, so that it didn't involve an intrusion. I realize that I don't want to put you in the soils engineer business, but the way you were describing it, it sounded like the more it was into the ground, the more concerned you were.
Yeah, I guess I'm I was in, you know, when you talk about a pool that can be, you know, fairly deep. I mean, this pool is not that big. I agree. It's kind of like a very large hot tub. So I don't know a lot about pools. And so when he described it, I couldn't determine whether there was excavation or not. I think it's a little bit confusing the way it was represented in the designs, because it isn't mentioned as excavation. And so, but it does appear to be part of the proposed project. So I will express that it's a little, like, we've spent a lot of time back and forth on it. And frankly, you know, 2 feet of, if we're talking about just a couple feet of excavation, I'm not sure that that's enough to, you know, cause a problem. But I would, again, you know, it's something that the geotech should look at, for instance, and provide. I would want an assurance, like Commissioner Ruddock was asking for. I would want some assurance that that isn't an issue in terms of, you know, any destabilization or allowing kind of, you know, potential exacerbation to erosion issues, for instance. My guess is probably not, based on what I now understand is the pool. But but I will express a bit of frustration that it wasn't better laid out as to what they were proposing, because it does involve, you know, there is grading, and it is, you know, some excavation, it sounds like. So it feels a little bit like we spent a lot of time on something that probably didn't, maybe just needed us to a little, like, side note of, like, hey, let's get a little more information about, or make sure that there's a analysis of whether that's an issue for, you know, drainage or soils concerns, et cetera. So that's it. I don't want to, I'm not going to necessarily say that has to be above ground. Also, I don't know what that means in terms of a pool like this. So it seems like if you want to sit on the side, you're not going to be able to if it's all above ground. So
yeah. The related concern is with respect to the I want to call it dry well, but that wasn't the word that was used. The catchment basin and its location. You know, the draft, the addendum to the staff report, that the additional condition with respect to drainage called for work that's not in front of us. And I must say, it's a little bit difficult to make findings about a design that I don't have, and for which I don't have findings. I feel like I think CEQA has, the guidelines have specific policies that tell us we aren't supposed to be assessing the adequacy of mitigations that aren't defined. We can't say, well, we're going to mitigate for it, trust us. We're supposed to see the mitigations. What are your thoughts about this, Jill?
Thank you, Commission. We're really wanting you to have what you need in front of you to make confident decisions at every time that you're asked to do so. And when you have to discuss something like this, and you're not finding it in the plans, you're not finding it in the staff report, we want to go back and get it for you. So staff's recommending that you consider continuing this item with a narrow focus on a couple materials to bring back. We don't want to open it up to new studies for bio. A lot of work's been done there. A wetland delineation has been accomplished. The buffers are mapped. There's a lot of really good technical work that went into that. And of course, the professional biologist is here at this meeting. You didn't have the benefit of the project engineer being present tonight. We also don't have the more developed grading and drainage plan, which we would, in this case, we had a replacement house. If this was a new site, we would always have required more detailed plans for you at this point. That said, there's complexities in terms of moving the footprint of the building, even if it's going into a better location, even if it is a little bit smaller. You're noting things about the location of the detention basin that are not fully worked out. Information about the pool was not well enough understood. There's a lot of things that I think would be really easy for the applicant to pull together with his design team. Clearly, he spoke about them several times to you. So I would really want to focus again on the grading and drainage plan and on the landscape plan. Staff would like to explore what could be done with regards to restoration. The applicant talked to you about not being allowed to plant in the buffer. Well, that's true when the plant palette is traditional landscape plant materials, and it could actually be very beneficial if we follow the correct permitting process and approach it as a restoration kind of project, where the kinds of plant materials that are well known to be stabilizing could be introduced and could also be aesthetically really satisfactory. We would hope to be able to harmonize those needs for a homeowner. I'm sure that the biologist could help the landscape architect and working some of those things out. So we think this, depending on the applicant's ability to pull their team together, we think these are things that would help you. They would improve the project and answer a lot of the questions that you have. That said, we got to be clear, this project is not going to solve the existing condition, and we appreciate that the commission has been clear about the scope of what can be expected from this project. It's a standard of review in the local coastal land use plan and all of the regulations that our city engineering staff reviews for stormwater management. So I hope that's helpful. We thought it was ready. We don't like to do noticing and invite a whole bunch of people to a hearing when things aren't ready for you, but we think you need this.
Thank you. Let's see. Commission, I received a note from Bridget that the applicant and another member of the public wanted to speak. Are you prepared to entertain what they've had to say, or did you want to continue this? Sarah, you're muted.
Sorry, everybody froze for a minute. So I'm fine. I would be fine with hearing the applicant and the other speaker.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would too.
I'm guessing that with me and Rick, I'm guessing Rick would be fine with it. So Mr. French and Janet.
Yes. So I'm going to let Janet speak, and then maybe Mr. French last, just in case he needed to wrap up or answer any questions from the public.
Yeah, if you could make the comments brief, please.
All right, Janet, you're on.
Yeah, I appreciate the commissioner's concern about the retention basin. I think that that's a big issue. Also, my concern is if it's being built and it's being built in the set off from the creek, how is that going to work with permits? Another just point of information, last winter was exceptionally dry. We got less than half of our normal amount of rainfall, hence all the fires. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. French, I hope that you understand that we're coming to you as friends, not just as regulators.
Of course, no, I appreciate that, Chair Benjamin. So I'll keep it brief. So by the way, I've already been texting with Charlie Kissick over at Sigma Prime. He's planning on getting out there, I think he said this week, to the project, so he can get involved pretty quickly. Yeah, he says he'll try for this week. I guess I just want to make a couple of points. So obviously, I think a little bit of is probably irrelevant, but back to the points that Sarah made earlier. And I do want to stress, right, that obviously I've done my best and my family's done the best to bring the best experts we know locally to take care of the questions you guys might have. I have worked tirelessly with the planning department Half Moon Bay with literally weekly phone calls to make sure that every question you could come up with had been answered. But obviously we fell short, so I apologize for that. But we've hired so Sigma Prime is our geologist, and they will be taking care of that. I hope that will solve the questions. In terms of the vegetation, yeah, we're totally supportive. If you guys will allow us to plant in that riparian buffer, but just so you understand, right, we don't want our house having problems. So I appreciate you guys' concern. And yeah, if you guys let us plant in that buffer, we would happily plant vegetation that would maintain that bank for sure. But again, we were told to delete all of our landscaping that we had in that riparian buffer for this meeting, which is why it's empty. So, and lastly, and again, I know you guys come across a lot of projects, but obviously, and I appreciate all you guys' comments. This is obviously an extremely frustrating process for everybody, which I'm sure you hear pretty frequently. But I would just hopefully ask that this should be a simple thing to fix to get the information you need to hopefully approve our project. And I would just like to hopefully make sure that we can be on that next meeting, which I think is 2 weeks from now, because we do want to get this project moving. So I would just hopefully ask that you don't continue this thing for very long. We can get on this right away.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll note in passing that the one of the conditions for the project actually specifically allowed the replacement of a certain list of invasive exotics in the buffer with other species. I think it was condition 24, if I'm not mistaken. And so I don't think it's a radical departure to be able to work in the buffer. I did see a condition, a comment, an early comment from the Coastal Commission staff that suggested no work should occur in the buffer. That may be what Mr. French is referring to. That caught my eye as well. And I believe that if I'm not mistaken, staff, you've included a copy of that ex parte communication. I contacted the Coastal Commission staffer to reconcile the no work in the riparian buffer with the, if you have these bad plants, you need to replace them. And the response I got back from the Coastal Commission staffer was the prohibition was with respect to heavy machinery, but doing work to improve the riparian veg, the restoration work was fine. So if that was the basis for thinking there couldn't be work there, let the record reflect that that was not their concern, and I don't think it's ours.
Chair Benjamin, that staff appreciates that you got that clarification, but we also want to note that the plants that were proposed in the landscape plan were not appropriate for the buffer, which was also
right. Okay, so let's get the right plants.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So you heard Mr. French say he was hoping. I'm sorry, Sarah.
Through the chair, there's two things. One is about that. With including the, there's landscaping and then talking about doing some sort of plant restoration or trying to increase the natives in the buffer zone area. And I just want to make sure that we're careful about not making that implying that that's a mitigation requirement for the landowner. Because while it's great that voluntarily they would want to do it, I don't want them to be put in the position of it becoming because that's actually not appropriate for this, within the scope of what they should be required to do. And I think it's an important clarification because it just can affect kind of what happens down the road, permitting wise. And so I just want to make that clear because if it becomes kind of a required mitigation type of, or implied that it is, they could end up in kind of a challenging permitting requirements with other agencies, for instance. So I just want to bring that up, that's something I don't want to see the landowner, the property owner put in that position, while I completely applaud voluntarily doing restoration planning. The other thing that never came back to, and I'm not meaning to throw a monkey wrench in this, but I did want to, I remember that Jan Leonard brought up she raised a question about the property, the lot line And I just wanted to know, was that something that had come up previously, a question that staff was aware of, where you know, I just wanted to find out if you had any more information about that, because I don't know if that matters to needs resolution, or if it's just something that's already been dealt with and not a big deal.
I'm guessing that they're going to tell us that this is a matter for the property owners to sort out, but staff, your take?
I think Scott can cover this.
Yeah, certainly. So we can follow up with the applicant surveyor, and they can provide clarification on the lot line location, and then provide that to the neighbor.
Okay then. Anything else? Staff, how long would you for this to, do you want to try to bring this back at our next meeting? Is our agenda open for it? No, it's not.
Well, your agenda might be open for it, but I think what folks might not realize is that the next meeting means we'd have to have a full packet for you ready on Friday, and it's Tuesday night, and we have professional plans that need to be developed and submitted, but also staff needs adequate time to review them. So we cannot turn it around that fast.
And you've got an LCP at the city council.
There's a little bit of that going on too, but just in and of itself, this is too tight with grading and drainage and landscaping plans and all the different staff specialties that need to not only review this, but have a coordinated review. We need to collaborate, and there's cross-cutting issues with landscape plans, grading plans, and drainage plans. So we respectfully request that time. We hear the applicant, we appreciate it. I am recognizing now we do have that extra 5th Tuesday. It's still tight. We were going to suggest October 27th, the second October meeting. I think that's enough time for all of us, including the applicant and his team. There are permitting questions. We will also need to go back to the Coastal Commission and just confirm changes. They are wanting to know when those kinds of things come through the Planning Commission shop. They watch everything you have, and that's important. So I know it doesn't look maybe like as much as it is, but
oh no, when I studied guitar many years ago and I wanted to play fast, my guitar teacher taught me that speed was the byproduct of accuracy. So let's get it right.
Yeah.
If that works for other commissioners, I would entertain a motion to continue this item to that date.
I'll move that we continue the item to the October 27th meeting. That I hopefully got that correct date.
The record shows that the community development director nods. Is there a second?
I second it.
Thank you. Roll call, please. Bridget.
Commissioner Polgar?
Yes.
Commissioner? Commissioner Hernandez, are you?
Yes.
Vice Chair Reddick?
Yes.
And Chair Benjamin?
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes to continue.
All right, we're looking forward to seeing it back in October. So that was the last public hearing item on our agenda. The next item should be the director's report, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you, Chair Benjamin. We will cover this quickly. So your next meeting is October 13th. You had a study session a couple months ago on a project at Mill and Parissima, and it has been through the Architectural Advisory Committee and had a review that makes it really ready for you. So you're going to see that on October 13th. It's a mixed-use project. On October 27th, we just added something to your agenda. We also may have a single-family home ready for you. It's one that must be seen by the commission because it has enough exceptions associated with it, that it's in your purview. It has also gone through the Architectural Advisory Committee. In fact, it went through 2 times. So we believe that it may be ready for you by the 27th. We have many other projects brewing, and we're working hard to get them ready, and we'll keep you up to date on when things can come your way. Bridget and I wanted to make a note about the status of your minutes. We pride ourselves in getting you minutes from the previous meeting, every single meeting, and we're 2 down, and the reasons are you had a very short minutes that we'll crank out for the August 25th meeting when you continued the local coastal land use plan September 8th. And we just need to go back and polish that up. We were very busy. Your September 8th minutes are being prepared through a transcription service because that was your public hearing for the land use plan. We wanted to have especially detailed minutes for the record, and we'll be doing the same thing with the city council. So when they're ready, we'll have them for you. They'll be thicker than usual, and my experience with these is they'll be very accurate, and I'll be impressed. So, and then Bridget and I will make sure we get these done for October 13th, because we can't stand it. We just can't. Okay, so that's where they are. City Council, last week on September 15th, Council approved transferring the remaining base allocations for Measure D certificates. There were 10 remaining out of the 23 downtown base allocations that could potentially be transferred from downtown to outside of downtown. This does not apply to the downtown bonus allocations. Those are only allowed to be used in the downtown area. Their approval for this was conditioned to only using them for accessory dwelling units where the applicants had already applied for Measure D certificates following the meeting that you had in March when we talked about, you almost had to go through a ranking process and confirm it, but we didn't quite get to that point. We have 16 applications, so there will be some that won't make it, and they will be likely to be applying in January 2021. Also then moving forward for City Council, as noted, we have a special hearing on September 29th. We scheduled this a long time ago. And now we understand that I didn't notice it. It came up to our attention. We've all been working so hard that the first presidential debate, they forgot to contact us and see if they had a conflict. So the debate is at exactly the same time as the meeting that we were trying to have, as being a very nice, focused one item agenda. So it is very likely, and we're confirming this, it's very likely that the City Council will continue the item to the very next day on September 30th. But this was noticed, they must meet to do so. Otherwise we have to renotice everything. And we will make a very big to-do about the shift in the day with e-news and posting to Nextdoor. And I think I didn't tell Bridget about this yet, so she's okay. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, we'll be okay. And do remember, this was noticed and planned to be a 2-night hearing for City Council. So in addition to the September 29-30 hearing, they will also have the item for deliberation and time to do so on October 6th. And at that point, you know, if they continue and need more time, they will make that known and we will keep working on it. If they're done, they're done. So you will see in our packet, it will go out at the end of the week, that there will be a few things that we have done more research on since you acted a couple weeks ago, and we will have time to talk about those things where we were suggesting some massaging on just a couple items, and we don't want to surprise you about it. I can't talk about them yet. They're not agendized here, but this is just one of those things where staff is trying hard to be transparent and tell you what we're up to. All right. Community Development Director, because we've been so busy with everything else, we aren't ready for a director meeting until October 14th. Of course, Scott has, he's just got so much. He's got 3 items for that. They're all, I think, administrative approvals, but we will post the agenda and we will, again, host the Zoom room just to give people, neighbors a chance who might not have sent an email or called the planner on the phone, who wanted to talk to somebody about a project in their neighborhood. And we've been doing that for a while now, and it's a couple people have popped in and they're really pleased to have someone to talk to and explain what's going on in the process and show them the plans. And it's, we're delighted to do it. We're very, very happy to do that with City Hall not quite open yet, which I'm looking forward to giving you updates about. San Mateo County just, we believe, shifted from the purple zone to the red zone, and red is usually the worst thing ever, but in this case, it's an improvement for our COVID status and protocols and uses that we can have. So we'll be working towards a more open City Hall soon. All right, Architectural Advisory Committee, and I'm almost done. They did meet last week. They looked at that house I've already mentioned on Myrtle. They also looked at a sign permit, a new sign at the new restaurant at, Scott, I think I've got the address wrong. Is it 315 Main Street?
That's correct, it's 315.
Okay, down by Pillarcitos Creek. So replacing an old restaurant that had moved. I was concerned about the sign. It appeared to fall within my purview, but there were design things that I'm pretty picky about, and I'm happy to say the Architectural Advisory Committee was very picky about. It was really helpful. So this should guide applicants, but it's also educational for staff, and that committee is just has been a delight to work with. And if you ever have time to just pop in, right now it's really easy to do because they're on Zoom too, and they're handling it very gracefully. Their next meeting will be October 15th. And I don't know what we're bringing to them yet, although they did ask, they want to learn more about the code enforcement process around non-permitted signage, or what we might think of as sign creep, where there's signs that are approved and then you turn around and all of a sudden there's 3 or 4 more on a particular building. So we'll learn more about their thoughts on that in the near term. Scott's their liaison. It's been going great, and we're happy to have that group. So that's our report. And if you have questions for us, please let us know.
Are there any questions for the director? Yes, Vice Chair Ruddock.
Thank you, Jill. About 3 meetings ago, the commission expressed interest in agendizing an item to get public comment on the start time of our meetings, with traditional 7 p.m. versus perhaps something else, and perhaps just in the interim of the health crisis. But could we do that and get that on the agenda sometime soon, please?
Yeah, Bridget, can you help me remember to do that? I think we could do it at your next meeting. I think there's room.
And another question. before the city council hearing, do you need a signed resolution on the LCP update we recommended? And if so, shall I talk to Tara about that? Maybe there's one waiting in my inbox that I haven't signed yet, for which I apologize. I haven't seen a note yet.
We'll
There
make
is one.
a wet signature from you, Chair Benjamin. We'll
Just want to get out of the critical path. That's all.
No, you're not in the way. We are scurrying.
All right. Any other questions from the director, for the director? If not, are there any planning commission communications? Really? Well, there's one more item on our agenda. Do you know what that is, Vice Chair Ruddick?
I do, and I'd like to propose that we adjourn with in honor of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please, Bridget.
Commissioner Polgar,
Yes.
Commissioner Hernandez,
I agree.
Vice Chair Reddick,
Yes.
and Chair Benjamin.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.
We are adjourned in memory of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Thank you and good night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.